My name is Eloise Grant. I'm 84 years old now. People see my silver curls, my trembling fingers, and the way I sip tea slowly on the porch of my small Virginia home. They smile kindly. They think I'm just a sweet old woman living out her final chapters in peace. What they don't know, what they could never guess, is that I still carry a scar so deep it never healed. A wound left by someone who should have protected me. Someone who should have loved me like a brother. I was just 14. A quiet girl who still believed in goodness and Sunday morning hymns. I had never kissed a boy. I still wore my school shoes to church and folded my hands before meals. My mother had remarried a man named Thomas when I was 12, and with him came his son, Darren, my stepbrother. He was 17, handsome, popular, smiled like he was made of sunshine. But behind that grin was a darkness I would learn too late. One humid evening in July, the power had gone out. My mother and Thomas were at a neighbor's barbecue. Darren and I were home alone. I had been reading a book in my room by candlelight, trying to ignore the buzz of mosquitoes and the heavy, sticky silence. That's when I heard the creak in the hallway. I looked up. Darren stood at my doorway, shirtless, his face unreadable in the dim light. "You scared?" he asked, stepping inside. I shook my head. "No." He smiled and sat at the edge of my bed. "You don't have to lie, Ellie. I know you're scared of the dark." He reached for the candle, snuffed it out with his fingers, and that's when everything changed. In the silence, in the blackness, my world split in two. I still hear the sound of his breathing. I still feel the weight of that night on my chest, even after 70 years. Froze. My heart beat so fast I thought it would leap from my ribs. I whispered no again and again, but my whispers drowned beneath his silence. I begged, but nobody heard. Nobody came. And when it was over, I lay there trembling, bleeding, staring into the void, thinking, this must be what it means to lose everything all at once. But that was just the beginning. Because when I told my mother what happened, she looked me in the eye and said, "Don't you dare lie about my husband's son." And just like that, the house I called home became a prison. But before I tell you how I survived, before I show you what I did later in life, and how I eventually made him pay, you need to understand how it all began. Let me take you back. Back to the little town of Franklin, Virginia. Back to the moment I first met Darren. Back to when I was still hopeful, still innocent, and had no idea the devil wore a boy's face. 'Cause the truth is, I wasn't the only one he hurt. And by the time the truth finally came out, it was too late for some of us. But not for me. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Eloise's journey is just beginning. Don't miss what happens in the next chapter. The first time I met Darren, I was wearing a yellow dress with lace at the collar. Mama had sewn it by hand. She wanted me to look nice for Thomas and his son. "They're family now, Eloise," she'd said, brushing my hair back tightly into a braid. "We're starting over." Thomas had a strong voice, the kind that filled a room before his feet even touched the carpet. He walked in like a man who owned everything in sight. I didn't like him from the beginning. Something about the way his eyes lingered too long. The way he touched Mama's shoulder. Too firm, too proud. But Mama smiled. She needed this man. We had nothing and he had a car, a house, and a boy in high school. That boy was Darren. He was tall and cocky with jet black hair that fell across his forehead like a movie star's. He smiled when he saw me, real slow. I thought it was just a friendly smile. But I would learn the difference between a smile and a smirk. "Hi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked me over and said, "You're prettier than I thought a stepsister would be." I blinked. Didn't know how to respond. Mama laughed nervously and said, "Darren, don't tease her." But it wasn't teasing. It was testing. From that day on, everything in the house changed. First, Darren was nice. Overly nice. He'd sit beside me during TV time and whisper jokes into my ear. He'd brush his hand against mine accidentally. He'd bring me pieces of candy, leave them on my pillow like I was someone he was trying to impress. I was a little girl in a storm I didn't yet understand. He started showing up where I didn't expect him. In the hallway when I came out of the shower. Near the kitchen window when I changed clothes. In the backyard when I played hopscotch alone. Always watching. Always close enough to make my skin crawl, but never close enough for Mama to see. Began to shrink. My laughter got quieter. My dresses got longer. I stayed in my room more. Mama thought I was just adjusting to our new life. One night, while we were washing dishes together, she said, "You're lucky to have a big brother now. He's smart and he likes you." Flinched. Brother. That word never fit right in my mouth when it came to Darren. Sometimes I'd wake up and find the door to my bedroom cracked open when I'd swear I locked it. One time I found a strand of dark hair on my pillow that wasn't mine. I told myself I was imagining things. That it was all in my head. That boys are weird. But one night I heard footsteps stop right outside my door. And the sound of a hand resting on the knob. Just waiting. I held my breath. I didn't sleep. That morning I asked Mama if I could get a lock for my door. She frowned and asked why. I said sometimes I felt scared. She told me not to be silly. "He's your brother," she said again. "Family doesn't hurt family." But family did. Least he did. School became my only escape. There I could breathe. I had a friend named Clarice. She wore purple nail polish and always saved me a seat at lunch. She didn't know what was going on, but she could tell I was changing. "You okay, Ellie?" she asked once. "You seem dimmer." I didn't even know how to answer. How do you explain a shadow that no one else can see? Then came that awful July night, the power outage. But the thing no one tells you is this. The worst night of your life doesn't end when the sun comes up. The morning after, I walked into the kitchen like a ghost. I could feel myself bleeding. I could feel my body shaking, but I said nothing. Mama noticed my silence, but not the pain behind it. "Did you and Darren manage okay last night?" she asked. My throat closed up. I opened my mouth, but the words refused to leave. That's how silence becomes a second skin. But that silence shattered a few weeks later when I threw up in class. They thought it was the heat. Or nerves. But I knew. And what I did next would change the course of my life forever. If you're still with me on this journey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will break your heart. And then begin to piece it back together. I sat on the cold floor of the school nurse's office, my head between my knees, the taste of acid still burning in my throat. Miss Clara, the nurse, dabbed my forehead with a damp cloth and kept asking if I had eaten breakfast. I nodded even though I hadn't. I couldn't eat. I hadn't been able to for weeks. Not since that night. She gave me a ginger ale and a strange look. "I'm going to call your mother," she said. "Just to be safe." Panic. "No, please, she's at work. I don't want to worry her." Miss Clara hesitated but eventually nodded. "All right. But I want you to rest here a while. You don't look good, honey." When I got home, Mama was on the couch, folding laundry. She glanced up when I walked in. "Got out early." I didn't answer. I walked straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. There, in the silence, I whispered a word I had never said out loud before. Pregnant. It was just a suspicion. A storm forming in the distance. But deep in my gut I knew. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. That night, I watched Darren from across the dinner table. He chewed with his mouth open, joked with Thomas about baseball, and winked at me when Mama wasn't looking. He acted like nothing happened. Like my body wasn't broken and my heart wasn't burning with questions. The next morning I woke up before everyone else. I walked 3 miles to the only pharmacy in town. I told the cashier I needed something for nausea. She handed me a pregnancy test and said, "Better to know." I hid it in my school bag. That evening, after everyone went to bed, I locked myself in the bathroom and followed the instructions. 3 minutes later, I stared at the 2 pink lines with shaking hands. My world collapsed again. I sat on the floor for what felt like hours. My hands over my belly. My tears soaking my nightgown. I was just a child. How could I carry a child? I thought about ending it all right there. But something, some tiny invisible thread of strength, held me back. I decided to tell Mama the next morning. I walked into the kitchen. She was cracking eggs into a skillet. I stood there silent, trembling. "I need to tell you something," I said. She didn't look up. "Can it wait?" "No," I whispered. He turned. I placed the test on the table between us. "What is this?" she said, squinting. "I'm pregnant," I said. "It's Darren." Her hand slapped the table so hard the test bounced. "Don't you ever speak that lie again," she said through clenched teeth. "Mama, I'm not lying." She stepped toward me. "Do you want to destroy this family? Is that what this is?" "No, he came into my room." I told him no. She stared at me with wild, unbelieving eyes. You little slut. You probably threw yourself at him." Gasp. "I know what girls like you do," she spat. "I won't let you ruin us." And just like that, my mother became my enemy. She told Thomas. He barged into my room later that night, his face red with rage. He grabbed my arm so hard I thought it would break. "You filthy liar," he roared. "You trying to ruin my son's future." I screamed. He covered my mouth. I cried into his palm. Darren watched from the hallway. He smiled. From that night on, I was locked in my room every evening. I was taken out of school. Mama told everyone I had fallen ill. No one came to visit. No one knew. It was like I vanished from the world. They said they'd deal with the problem. That's what they called the baby. But I wouldn't let them. At night I began praying, not just for protection but for power. A voice inside me whispered, "You are not done. You are not weak. You are not alone." Then one night I found a letter slipped under my door. Said just 5 words. "I believe you. See." I clutched that note like it was a lifeline. Could it be Clarice? Could she know something? Or was someone else watching? Someone unexpected. Someone who could help me escape this house of horrors. If this chapter hit your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will reveal who left that note, and the price of believing a girl no one else did. I pressed the note to my chest like it could protect me. My heart thudded so hard it made my ribs ache. Someone knew. Someone believed me. After weeks of being treated like I was invisible, like I was dirty, delusional, or dangerous, this tiny scrap of paper felt like sunlight on frozen skin. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My thoughts raced. Who left the note? Clarice. Miss Clara, the school nurse. Could it be someone else entirely? And how had they gotten it inside my room without anyone noticing? At breakfast the next morning, I studied each face at the table. Mama, Thomas, and Darren. Mama served grits like nothing was wrong. Thomas scrolled through the newspaper. Darren smirked when our eyes met. I looked away quickly, but I didn't feel as small as I had before. That note, it had lit something inside me. Not hope exactly, but maybe the start of it. When I went to the bathroom, I checked under the door again. Nothing. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet, I knelt beside the door like it was an altar. I whispered, "Please, whoever you are, help me." The next morning, another note appeared. This one read, "Midnight. Back porch. Be quiet." My heart fluttered and dropped all at once. Midnight. That was when everyone would be asleep or drunk. I stuffed the note deep under my mattress and waited. The clock ticked like thunder in my room that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. At 11:57 p.m., I crept out of bed, slipped on my shoes, and tiptoed to the back door. The porch light was out. The wind was soft. And then footsteps. "Ellie," someone whispered. Turned. It was Clarice. She looked terrified, holding a flashlight and a school backpack clutched to her chest. "Come on," she said. "I've got a plan." I didn't ask questions. I just followed her into the night. We ducked behind hedges, crossed the back fence, and ran through the woods behind our neighborhood. She led me to her grandmother's old house, abandoned but still standing. We snuck inside through the side door. The floors creaked, and dust hung thick in the air. We sat on a broken couch in the living room, gasping for breath. "I've been watching your house," Clarice said. "You disappeared. No one knew why. But I saw your stepfather screaming at you once through the window. I knew something was wrong." I began to cry. "I tried telling the school counselor," she said, "but they said it wasn't our business." I clenched my fists. "Course they did. But I remembered something my grandma told me," she continued. "She said when the world won't protect you, sometimes you have to protect yourself." So I found her old journal. And her stash. She opened the backpack and pulled out a dusty tin box. Inside was a camera, a voice recorder, a battered notepad. "We're going to record everything," Clarice said. "Every scream, every bruise, every lie. And when we have enough, we go to the press. Not the police. The news." I stared at her. "You'd do that for me?" She reached out and held my hand. "No. I'll do it with you." Over the next few weeks, I returned home with a new plan. Clarice gave me a tiny recorder hidden in a bracelet. I wore it every day. I captured everything. Mama calling me wicked, Thomas threatening to send me away, Darren whispering filth when no one was around. We documented bruises. We hid a camera in the vent. And then one night, Darren slipped into my room again. But this time the camera was rolling. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I just let the lens see what the world refused to believe. The next day, Clarice and I met with a local reporter. She was a young woman named Miss Hayes, barely out of college, hungry for truth. We showed her the tapes, photos, the recordings. Her hands trembled. "I'm going to blow this wide open," she whispered. And she did. 3 days later, the story ran in the Franklin Gazette. The headline read, "Local girl locked away after accusing stepbrother. Recordings reveal abuse and cover-up." By the afternoon, there were cameras outside our house. By nightfall, Mama was arrested for child endangerment. Too. But Darren, he ran. Vanished. The police called him a fugitive in hiding. I was taken in by social services. For the first time in months, I slept in a bed where the door locked from inside. But I didn't feel peace. Because Darren was still out there. And I was carrying his child. And what came next would shake me more than anything before. If you're following Eloise's fight for truth and survival, like, comment and subscribe. Next chapter is where the Raoul test begins, when justice delays, and the past refuses to let go. They placed me in a group home on the far edge of Franklin, a 2-story white house with peeling paint, a rusty mailbox, and too many locked doors. There were 8 of us girls. All of us broken in some way. All of us carrying secrets heavier than our backpacks. My room was on the 2nd floor. Smelled like bleach and old wood. But I had my own bed. My own light switch. A door I could lock. That alone felt like a miracle. The staff were kind but distant. They smiled with their mouths, not their eyes. They handed me pamphlets titled Teen Trauma and You and scheduled therapy sessions twice a week. But what they didn't realize was, I wasn't just healing. I was preparing. Because Darren was still out there. And every time I turned on the news and didn't see his face, got colder, sharper, more focused. Clarice visited every Sunday, sometimes with her mother. She brought me books and snacks and whispered gossip from school like we were still normal teenagers. But nothing about us was normal anymore. We were girls who had stared into the abyss and chosen to fight back. One Sunday, Clarice showed up with a yellow envelope. "It came to my house," she said. "Addressed to you. No return name." I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photo of me, pregnant, taken through a window. And on the back, in shaky handwriting, it said, "I'm watching you. You'll never forget me." I dropped the photo. My legs buckled. Clarice caught me. He knew where I was. Darren was nearby. I reported the photo to the home director. They contacted the police. A detective came by, asked a few questions, promised they'd keep an eye out. But that was it. No security. No extra patrols. Just wait and see. That night I sat by the window, heart pounding, watching shadows stretch across the backyard. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The next morning I found claw marks on the outside of my window frame, like fingers dragging downward. I knew then. He wasn't running anymore. He was hunting. I told the director again. She nodded politely, handed me another therapy appointment slip. I wanted to scream, to shake her. He's coming for me. I wanted to yell. He's not finished. But they didn't believe me. So I started writing letters. To lawyers. To shelters. To churches. Anyone who would listen. I told them everything. My story, my fears, the baby growing inside me. Most never wrote back. But one letter did. It came from a woman named Lorraine Bishop, a retired nurse who ran a private home for pregnant teens who had experienced trauma. She wrote, "Dear Eloise, believe you. Come stay with me. You'll be safe here." The staff at the group home approved the transfer, probably grateful to be rid of me. A week later, a brown car pulled up. A woman with silver hair and deep eyes stepped out. She wore a navy coat and carried a cane, but her energy was calm, powerful. "You must be Eloise," she said. "I've been waiting for you." I burst into tears. Lorraine's house was nestled in the woods outside Charlottesville. Quiet, gated, warm. There were only 3 other girls there, all with stories that mirrored mine in different, painful ways. We shared meals, told stories, cried at night. But most importantly, we healed. And my baby grew. I didn't know whether I'd keep the child or give it up. Some nights I'd press my hand to my belly and whisper, "I'm sorry." Other nights, I'd dream of little hands and soft laughter. I was only 15, but life had aged me decades. Then one morning, Lorraine handed me a newspaper. On the front page, "Stepbrother arrested at abandoned cabin in woods. Survivor to testify." I dropped the paper. He was caught. And now, I had to face him. In court. In front of strangers. And tell the world what he did to me. Lorraine squeezed my hand. "You don't have to be brave, Eloise," she said. "You just have to be true." But could I really look into Darren's eyes again? Could I speak out loud what I'd only ever whispered in the dark? The trial was scheduled for 2 months later. And the night before it began, I went into labor. If this chapter touched your soul, please like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will bring you inside the courtroom, the birth room, and a moment Eloise never thought she'd survive. It started with a sharp pain just before midnight. At first, I thought it was just nerves. After all, the trial was in the morning, and I hadn't slept a wink. But then the pain came again. Stronger. Lower. Deeper. I clutched my stomach and whispered, "Not now. Please, not tonight." Lorraine rushed in when she heard me cry out. One look at my face and she didn't ask questions. Within 10 minutes, I was in the back seat of her car, wrapped in a blanket, groaning as another wave of pain tore through me. The hospital lights glowed like halos as we pulled into the emergency entrance. They admitted me immediately. Everything happened so fast. Nurses moving, machines beeping, voices calling out instructions. I lay on that hospital bed, sweating, shaking, and screaming through each contraction, knowing that just a few hours away, Darren would be sitting in a courtroom expecting me to stay silent. But my body had its own plan. The labor was long. 19 hours. I was young and terrified and stretched to my limit. But when it was over, I heard a cry. High, sharp, beautiful cry. They laid him in my arms. A tiny boy, red and wrinkled, with a patch of black hair and eyes squeezed shut. I stared down at him and whispered, "You didn't ask to come into this mess, but you're here. And I swear, I'll never let them hurt you." I named him Isaiah, after the verse that says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." The next day I sat in that courtroom, wearing a hospital gown under a borrowed coat. My stitches still fresh. My arms still aching from the weight of my new son. They offered to postpone my testimony. I refused, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. When I walked up to the stand, Darren's eyes widened. He didn't expect me to show. He certainly didn't expect me to show up holding proof of what he'd done. The prosecutor asked me to state my name. Eloise Grant, I said, voice trembling. Then he asked the hardest question. Can you tell the court what happened to you? I nodded slowly. My hands shook. My legs trembled. But I opened my mouth, and I told the truth. Every detail. Every bruise. Every night I'd cried into my pillow. The threats. The shame. The silence. I told them about the pregnancy. The photo he sent. The scratches on my window. The camera that caught him sneaking into my room. The recordings. The note from Clarice. The darkness I'd walked through to stand here. And when I was done, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge's gavel felt too loud when she called for recess. Darren's lawyer tried to poke holes. Said I was unstable. Teenager craving attention. That I had mental distress and inconsistent memory. But then, they played the recording. And the jury heard him whisper my name in the dark. Heard me cry. Heard him laugh. You could have cut the tension in that room with a knife. When it was over, the judge ordered Darren held without bail. And days later the verdict came in. Guilty. On all counts. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. For the first time in years I truly breathed. But the story didn't end there. Because the press picked it up again. And that's when Mama wrote to me. Letter. Begging for forgiveness. Saying she didn't know. Saying she should have believed me. I read her words over and over, but I felt nothing. Because what she did, what she allowed, left a hole that no apology could fill. Still, part of me wondered. Could she change? Could a mother who once turned away become someone I could ever trust again? The letter ended with a question. Can I meet my grandson? I stared at Isaiah, sleeping soundly in his crib. And I didn't know how to answer. Not yet. Because sometimes the people who break you don't deserve the chance to put you back together. But fate doesn't care what you're ready for. Because just 3 days later, Lorraine answered the door to find Mama standing on the porch with a suitcase. If you believe in healing and justice, please like, comment, and subscribe. Next chapter will test Eloise's heart like never before. Can forgiveness bloom in the soil of betrayal? She stood there like a ghost from another life. My mother, Margaret Grant, holding a scuffed brown suitcase and a folded umbrella. Her eyes looked older than I remembered. Not from age, but from regret. She wore a navy coat buttoned to her chin. Her lips pressed into a line so tight I could barely tell if she was breathing. Lorraine didn't say a word. She just turned and called for me. When I saw her, I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed. My palms turned cold. My breath caught in my throat. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had grown through pain, through motherhood, through survival. Eloise, she said softly. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't answer. I stood behind the door, Isaiah cradled in my arms. He stirred in his sleep, letting out a tiny sigh. I pressed my lips to his forehead and stepped forward. What do you want? I asked. She looked down. I want to meet him. To know him. And I want to fix things. I almost laughed. Fix things. You watched me wither, I said, voice low. You heard me beg for help. You turned your face away while he came into my room at night. You called me a liar. A slut. Tears gathered in her eyes. She didn't deny it. I was scared, she whispered. I was weak. And I believed what was easier. I wanted to scream. Easier for who? For you. For him. But I didn't. I just stood there, every bone in my body burning with history. Lorraine stepped between us gently. You can stay in the guest room tonight, she said. Just tonight. Mama nodded. Thank you. That night I didn't sleep. I sat up watching Isaiah, listening to Mama's slow footsteps across the hall. Part of me hated her. Part of me missed her. But a deeper part, the part one had buried, still longed for something impossible. A mother who chose me. The next morning she made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, burnt toast, orange juice. The way she used to, back when I was little and believed that breakfast fixed everything. I didn't touch the plate. You don't have to forgive me, she said, sitting across from me at the table. I just want to know him. I looked at her for a long moment. You can watch him while I take a nap. That was it. That was all I could give. She beamed like I had offered her the world. I handed Isaiah over slowly, reluctantly. He blinked up at her, tiny fists curled at his chest. Mama's hands trembled as she held him. Hi, little one, she whispered. I'm your grandma. I walked upstairs and collapsed on the bed. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, every nerve tight. After an hour I came back down. She was rocking him in the living room, softly humming. She looked up at me with tears streaking her cheeks. He's so peaceful, she said. He deserves peace, I replied coldly. Few weeks passed. He stayed. At first, I hated her presence. Her footsteps made my skin crawl. But slowly, something began to shift. He cleaned, helped change diapers. She sat beside me in silence when the nightmares came. She even visited therapy with me. One night, I found her crying in the kitchen. I pray for you every morning, she whispered. I pray you'll find your way back to me. I didn't answer, because I didn't know if I ever would. But I let her stay. Then one day, a letter arrived in the mail. Lorraine handed it to me, her brows furrowed. It's from prison, she said. Froze. I knew before I opened it. It was from Darren. Inside was a single page. I know what I did. I've had nothing but time to think about it. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to know, did he survive? Did the baby survive? My blood ran cold. Lorraine reached for the letter, but I pulled it back. He didn't deserve to know Isaiah. Not his name. Not his face. Not his life. But as I stared at the letter, something inside me cracked. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but something else. Power. Because for the first time, Darren wanted something from me. And I didn't owe him a damn thing. Still, I couldn't bring myself to burn the letter. I tucked it away in a box I labeled unopened wounds. Weeks turned into months. Mama stayed. Clarice visited. Isaiah started to giggle when I tickled his belly. I began to see color again. I began to write again. Then one evening, Lorraine handed me a form. Scholarship, she said. For young mothers who survived trauma. Full ride. I stared at the paper. College. A future. I think you're ready, Lorraine said. I looked down at Isaiah. And for the first time, I let myself dream. But dreams have a way of being tested. Because the very next day, someone broke into the mailbox outside Lorraine's gate. They didn't take anything except one letter. A letter addressed to me. From the scholarship committee. And scrawled across the fence in red paint were 4 words. You will never escape. If you believe Eloise deserves a future, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Next chapter will be the beginning of her biggest battle yet. And maybe her final victory. The red paint bled down the fence like a wound left open in the rain. The words, "You will never escape," looked freshly written, the strokes jagged like whoever had scrawled them did it in a fury. I stood there with Isaiah in my arms, my heartbeat loud in my ears, the silence of the morning heavier than any scream. Lorraine rushed out from the kitchen, eyes scanning the message. Inside. Now. She locked the doors, called the sheriff, and turned on every light in the house, even in the middle of the day. I sat on the couch, shaking, Isaiah pressed to my chest, while Mama gently rubbed my back. Her hands trembled too. They said he was locked up, I whispered. They said it was over. Could be a copycat, Lorraine said. Could be someone who saw the story in the paper. Some sicko. But I knew better. This wasn't random. This was Darren. He had found a way to send a message. Maybe through someone else. Or maybe by slipping something out from prison. Either way, he was still trying to haunt me. Control me. Silence me. The sheriff came, took photos, asked questions. He promised to increase patrols but didn't offer much more. They rarely do, Lorraine said after he left. That's why we protect ourselves. She handed me a small box. Inside was a phone. Untraceable. Use this for everything going forward, she said. We'll keep it off the grid. She also gave me a set of keys. I've moved you to the back cottage. More privacy. Better locks. I nodded, overwhelmed. Later that night, after Isaiah fell asleep in his bassinet, I opened the box labeled Unopened Wounds and took out Darren's letter again. I reread his words. Did the baby survive? I had a choice now. I could continue to live in fear. Or I could finish this. So I called Miss Hayes, the reporter who had covered my case. I need your help again, I said. But this time, I'm not the only one speaking. The next week we filmed a follow-up story. I sat on a wooden stool in a quiet studio, Lorraine by my side, Mama just off camera, holding Isaiah. This time I didn't tremble. This time I told the world everything. How survivors don't always heal in straight lines. How abusers often hide behind charm and bloodlines. How silence is not peace. I showed them the vandalism, the threats, the scars. I told them about my son. And then, I held him on camera. This is Isaiah, I said. He is not a shame. He is not a secret. He is my strength. The interview aired on local and national news. My inbox flooded. Other survivors. Other daughters. Other girls who had whispered no in the dark and had no one believe them. And then one day, a letter came. This time postmarked directly from the prison. I nearly threw it away. But something told me to open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. They moved me to isolation after your interview. I hear nothing now. Just my own thoughts. I used to think I owned you. But I was wrong. You own me. Every breath I take in this cell belongs to you. I hope someday you can forget me. But I know you never will. I folded the letter in half. And I burned it. Not out of rage, but release. 'Cause I finally understood. It was never about making him feel guilty. It was about me taking back my voice. And then came the real victory. The scholarship committee reached back out. They'd found the missing letter. It hadn't been stolen. Had been rerouted by mistake. And they were offering me a full ride. Childcare included. I was going to college. 18 months later, I walked into my first lecture hall. Isaiah, now a toddler, was in daycare down the hall. Mama lived in a small apartment nearby, still working to earn back my trust day by day. Lorraine visited often, proud and strong as ever. Clarice. She got a job in advocacy and ran workshops for teen girls like us. I sat in that lecture hall, textbooks open, pen in hand, and felt the strangest sensation. Freedom. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And one day, years later, when Isaiah was 10 and asked me why he didn't have a daddy, I told him the truth. Not the ugly details, but the strength. That I was once a girl no one believed. That I fought back. That I chose him over fear. And that we both survived. Together. If this story touched your soul, reminded you of the power inside survivors, and gave you hope for healing, please like, comment and subscribe. Every voice matters. Every story counts. And yours is not over yet.